Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. This is episode 4. I am the host, Ryan Sampson, but the star of the show is Joel Sherman. Today is Monday, April 8th. The Yankees take 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays, and I want to talk about the Yankees with Joel Sherman. Joel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Busy day today. I got to do this. I got a podcast, got an online column. I got to go to Yankees Marlins. So I understand we got to keep this tight. So let's get going.
Let's get going. Real quick, is there any time for you to see these solar eclipse today? Are you going to be able to take a look at the sun?
I'm the kind of idiot who will look up and lose my eyesight. So hopefully I'll miss it.
Okay. So let's start with our first pitch. Joel, I think everyone's talking about this because Giancarlo Stanton had quite the series against the Blue Jays. 2 home runs, a grand slam yesterday. I think a lot of the narrative around Giancarlo is this was a big year for him, considering last year how it went. It wasn't great, obviously. Brian Cashman saying he needs to get a little more athletic, and the injuries are there. The feelings were not great about Giancarlo heading into the season. But then you hear that in spring training, like always, he's in great shape. He's lost a little bit of weight. He's trying to become more flexible, all that stuff, more athletic. But this series, he looked really good. I mean, he was hitting the fastball well. But what I ask you is, Giancarlo Stanton, what kind of player are we going to see from him this season? Was this more of what we can expect? Obviously, you can't expect 2 home runs in a series every series, but are we going to expect a power hitter that can actually make contact? Because the first couple series did not look great for Giancarlo Stanton to start off the year.
Well, Ryan, you're nice. Let's not bury the lead. Over the weekend, I wrote a column about a series of players who have long-term contracts who have performed poorly in recent years and got off terribly this year. It included Chris Bryant and Javier Baez and Trevor Story, who unfortunately dislocated his shoulder. He's going to be out maybe the rest of the season. That kind of group of players. And I was asking the question, what are their teams going to do about them? First, do you take them out of the lineup? Then do you decide how much money you're going to eat? And because it's a New York audience, I led with Giancarlo Stanton, who I believe began the season 3 for 24 with 12 strikeouts or something like that, coming off of bad years. And, the reality is we still work at a newspaper, and we put together a Sunday newspaper. And for the big columns that are for Sunday, you got to deliver that by Friday afternoon. So I'm committed to Giancarlo Stanton before he takes it at bat on Saturday. And, of course, Saturday night, he hit a homer, then 3 hits. Sunday, he hit a bomb grand slam. It reminded me, you always like these long ago stories. I'm going to forget the year. I want to say it was like 94 or 95. Don Mattingly hadn't played great for a couple of years. And because people like Don Mattingly so much, they just kept saying, oh, he's got a new swing. He's learned how to do a new exercise with his back. He's about to have a monster season. And unfortunately for him, it also coincided with when steroids really blew up. So first basemen were producing outlandish numbers, and he was not anymore. And I finally decided to write a column where I would say to 5 scouts, forget he wears number 23, forget what he looks like. Scout him for me. Tell me who he is. And, it was pretty much that he was a rudimentary, maybe even below average producing first baseman. And it was a long story, and the back page of the paper was the Yankee slipper for Don Mattingly, because it was like year 3 or 4 of this. Well, that night in Toronto, he went like 4 for 5. He had a homer. He drove in the winning run. It started 2 months of great play. It reminds me what the Sports Illustrated jinx is kind of about, which is when somebody's going great, if you write about they're going great, sports is tough. They're likely to go the other way. And if somebody is going bad because they're a pro athlete, they're likely to go good when you start writing about them. So I knew I'd probably get Giancarlo Stanton started by writing something on him. But it has been a couple of years. Yeah. I do think he's a proud athlete. I do think he's taken steps this year with weight loss and being more athletic to try to make the best of being in his mid-30s and seeing if he could get back, being able to use his full body and not just his upper body to swing. And the weekend was encouraging. I think a lot of this season, Ryan, is you have the given of Soto and Judge if they're healthy. How many other guys join the party? Is Stanton going to mash? Are we seeing some new version of Volpe where he's going to be like a high-level hitter besides everything else? Is Rizzo the first half Rizzo? Does LeMahieu ever come back? Is Gleyber Torres a good player? So I think it was very encouraging. And you got to decide, was that the first week? Was that Stanton? Was the weekend Stanton? It's a long season. He has had a tendency to get hurt during the long seasons, but man, it's a tough lineup to deal with if he's going to be a masher as well.
Absolutely. I think there's like a paradox with Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, the person himself, he's handled himself tremendously
Terrific.
in New York. Like,
He's stand up. He has stood up to the bad stuff remarkably well. I think he's a truth teller about himself. I think he's very bright. It's kind of like sad he hasn't been a good player
mhm.
because I think he'd be so much more of a go-to guy on a lot of subjects because I think he's so thoughtful. Yeah, he just, after the first season, which also like he wasn't on the IL that first season, but I think he struggled with a hamstring and played through it because there were other injuries. I think he's been on the IL at least once every year since then, a couple of times in most seasons. And I don't think he's ever kind of suggested you guys got it wrong. I'm actually performing well. He's talked about that he's letting himself and others down.
Yeah, I think with Giancarlo too is that, and what I was most impressed with this past weekend is he was able to touch that fastball. Like it wasn't like he was letting fastballs go. Like he was able to the grand slam yesterday, that was like what, 93, 95 miles per hour inside. And he took that thing all the way to the second deck off the facing. That was what was impressive to me because it felt like at least the past couple of years, he's been losing that fastball, not be able to catch up to it. And he's been looking a lot of off speed. I don't know how you see it, if you think that maybe he's been approaching his bats differently, or is there something to maybe just the timing wasn't there yet and now he's starting to get it a little bit more?
I think when you're not healthy, Ryan, you make switches both consciously and subconsciously because things hurt or they don't feel well. And I do think he has had so many lower body injuries that I never pretend to do the scouting stuff. Like, he needs to get his elbow up more when he throws his curveball. It's not what I would consider an area of expertise, but it seemed pretty clear that he was an upper body swinger, right? Like he didn't have his whole body into it. And he's just so darn strong that when he was connecting, he would still be a guy leading the sport in barrels or near the top in barrels and exit velocity, because when the ball squares his bat, there's few guys outside of maybe Judge who do to a baseball what he can do to a baseball. Can he use his full body for a full season? It's a long way from here to there. Will the ability to keep him out of the field? I think that's one of the things we've seen early, which was, the Yankees are going to want to use him in the field a little. The underlying thing there was that the word on Soto and the scouting on Soto was he wasn't a very good defender, but he's been fine so far this year. He's a guy who wants to be out there every day. I think they're going to have trouble getting Trent Grisham on the field, actually, and I think they thought they'd get him on the field quite a lot. Now, Verdugo's struggling early, so maybe he gets on the field a little that way, but I don't think they really need to push Stanton onto the field. So by not doing that, can his legs stay fresher? Can they even give him some DH time off, because they do want to get Judge out of center field some, maybe get Soto off his feet every once in a while? I think it's a health issue for this player, and I just think Brian Cashman maybe said it in an impolitic way, but it was not incorrect. It might not have been polite, but it wasn't wrong. And so it's a long way from here to there.
It truly is. And we're going to be interested to see, again, can he keep this up? Can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field and be able to produce in this lineup? Because to your point, Joel, we knew it was Judge and Soto, but who else is going to be joining them? And Giancarlo Stanton certainly made a statement this past weekend against the Blue Jays. Let's move on to our next topic, and I want to pitch a new segment to here, Joel. It's going to be called, Oh, That's Interesting. Something that you saw this past week from the Yankees that had you saying exactly that. Oh, that's interesting.
So I hope this makes sense to others. It does to me, because if there's a main topic, unfortunately for baseball, there's a lot of main topics the first 10 days or so of the season, none of them very good. They have to do with Ohtani and gambling. They have to do with terrible uniforms. They have to do with the ridiculous ownership in Oakland and how that has been handled in their Sacramento, Vegas, Oakland, or whoever they exactly are this week, A's. But I think on the day-to-day basis, the most worrisome thing is the pitching injuries. I wrote a column about a week ago that to begin the season, I think there were 166 players on the injured list. 79.5%, 80% were pitchers. And that's before we find out that a week into the season, Yuri Perez, one of the better young starters, needs Tommy John surgery, and Shane Bieber needs Tommy John surgery, and Jonathan Loaisiga needs elbow surgery. Like we're watching guys go down here, and it's sad. If you love sports, you want to see the best players healthy and playing. Selfishly, like this is the reason you don't want to see attrition. You want to see the best of it out there. And look, there's a war going on now between the union and the and MLB about the causes. And look, I think those two sides would have a fight if today is Monday or not. So I think they're just born to fight. And the union, because it didn't want the pitch clock, is pointing to the pitch clock. And I'm not here not to say that it's not a contributing factor, right? But I'm unfortunately old enough to remember a time where pitchers were delivering the pitch every 10 seconds. What they weren't doing was throwing it at max effort every 10 seconds. They were looking for max movement, spin, velocity. And it just brings me to, there's a whole philosophy of pitching that came up again over the weekend. It was really exemplified to me Saturday in both the Met and the Yankee game. The Mets played an afternoon game at 4 o'clock. The Yankees played at 7. The Mets played at 4 o'clock. And going into that game, it was understood, because of the way the game is played now, they did not have their top 5 relief pitchers available to them. They didn't have their top 5 relief pitchers available to them. So Luis Severino is a veteran. And part of what he needs to do is, man, you got to get 18, 19, 20, 21 outs. Well, he got 15 outs. It took him 95 pitches. There was no concession that I'm going to throw as hard as I can and try to miss a bat on every pitch for 95 pitches. And he ended up lasting 5 innings. The Mets needed Yohan Ramirez, who's probably the last guy in their staff, to try to cover multiple innings. He couldn't, and they lost the game. That night, the Yankees take a 6-0 lead early, and Clark Schmidt is on the mound. And even though he has a 6-0 lead, all he's doing is still trying to miss every bat. Mm-hmm. It's okay to throw a sinker and get a 1-pitch ground out. Part of the deal is when you get a 6-0 lead, try to manage the game and rest your bullpen. Baseball, as opposed to the NFL, where it's like, oh, my guy's a little nicked up, I got a week to get him ready. If you use your whole bullpen today, you can't use it tomorrow, right? It's the beauty of having Garrett Cole in your rotation is he's going to get you 21 outs. You could kind of blow out your bullpen the day before and the day after. Well, he's not on the team now. So part of the responsibility is when you could go a little deeper, you got to play the scoreboard and not just the modernity. And to me, he's out there throwing 90-plus pitches to get 13 outs with a 6-0 lead. And the Yankees won the game. But it was a loss if even Hamilton and Clay Holmes had to warm up that night. And not only did they have to both warm up, they both had to get in the game. And if the Yankees would have lost Sunday, because they certainly probably didn't have Hamilton available and maybe not Holmes, few people would have said, you know whose fault that is? That's Clark Schmidt's fault. That's modern pitching's fault. There is not an understanding. Him and Austin Wells is catching the game. Dude, until we're in some trouble, let's try to get outs quickly. Yeah. That's part of today. Let's try to get outs. We're trying to accomplish 2 things here. Hold this big lead and keep our big guys out of the game. Let's try to stretch out your start. And I just think it's part of modern baseball. Clark Schmidt is throwing max effort for 91 pitches with a 6-0 lead. And I think as I'm looking for contributing factors to what's going on with arms right now, I just think the inability to ever pull back on the throttle and offer something else, as opposed to I'm aiming for a corner with as much spin and as much velocity as possible. I think it's baked into it somehow.
It's interesting you put it that way, Joel. I think, is there something to the fact that an Aaron Boone or even Matt Blake can even comment to Clark Schmidt in the middle of the game, like, hey man, like look at the score. You know the bullpen's been killed now. Like, can you give us a little bit more length and maybe pitch for hopefully a ground ball or 2 or a pop out or 2?
I think people talk to him, especially the following day. It's hard in the heat of the battle, but the fact is, I just think we watch a lot of baseball these days where we're determining what to do in a game at 3 o'clock in an afternoon, which is fine. Strategize all you want. I'm an information guy. You have the information, but to me, you've got to then play the game that's in front of you. I'll give you one earlier in the week, home opener. I get it. Trevor Richards has reverse splits. I get it. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it probably sounds great. Hey, we're going to use our righties against Trevor Richards because he's got it. But what if it's a 1-0 game late in Yankee Stadium? Yankee Stadium, the place with the short porch. It's a 1-0 game late, and Jose Trevino is up with 2 outs. Like, the best Jose Trevino is going to do is get a single. He's 2 more hits away from scoring with 2 outs. To me, I get the reverse splits, but even in the reverse splits, the one thing Trevor Richards does is he gives up some homers to left-hand hitters. You got all these new toys on your bench that are lefty hitters you haven't had for a few years. Austin Wells, how about there? John Birdie leads off the next inning against
Where's Oswaldo?
Against Richards. Again, you're losing 1-0 at Yankee Stadium. If you're losing 1-0 at Oracle Park, where it's hard to get the ball out to right field, I got it. But to me, it feels like that's a 3 p.m. decision. Well, that was an afternoon game, so maybe it's a 10 a.m. decision. Yeah. And instead of what's happening right now? Like what does the other team hope you don't do? Do that. And I know, because I did talk to the other team, they were hoping they didn't use lefty hitters there.
That's so fascinating. That's something I think, and me and Tommy had talked about that, actually, that those decisions. Why wasn't Cabrera in there? Why wasn't Wells in those spots? And you saw it on social media as well. But like, if maybe, I don't know, is there something adjusting to the fact that Boone's never had this many lefties on the bench and he's been able to never use that? I mean,
I think they're well thought out. I actually do think Aaron Boone is given a good dose of information, and then he's making them in real time. I just wonder, in real time, what's happening being, hey, we're card counters at the casino. And if you're card counters at the casino, you don't react to like individual cards. You react to the whole deck. Mm-hmm. And if you don't sway over 162 games, the cards land your way. And I think they would say the cards are to put right-hand hitters up against Trevor Richards' changeup. I'm here to say that I believe it's environmental. It's the moment. Again, it's Yankee Stadium. It's, the next day, Giancarlo Stanton hit like a 315-foot home run to right field. You could hit a pop-up and tie the game. Trevino can't do that. Birdie can't do that. And you're running out of outs and chances to string something together. It just feels to me like, and it's not just the Yankees, I feel like a lot of the game is played hours before the game. And instead of being information collectors and then using the information to adapt to the game, we're just letting the information sterilely make a decision when that information always has to be added to what is the situation in the game.
No, it's definitely true, Joel. And I mean, there's a lot of information. Moving on to our next topic here, Radio Rational. There's a lot of information about the Yankees bullpen right now. It's been great. Like, the bullpen has done a tremendous job to start the season, Joel. But we get the word about Jonathan Loaisiga. He's going on the 60-day IL with the flexor strain. And then, for the Yankees, they've used Holmes a lot. They've used Hamilton a lot. A lot of these guys have pitched a lot of innings because you're not getting length, like to your point, out of the starters. The Radio Rational take I have here, Joel, is that the Yankees bullpen has been taxed so much, they cannot wait to acquire another high-end reliever because you did lose one of your best in Loaisiga. And I don't know if they have enough to last all the way until that trade deadline time to make that acquisition, because this bullpen, as it stands right now, is already getting hit. I mean, they're throwing a lot of pitches right now, and they're in a lot of high leverage relief appearances. I just don't know if they have enough right now to last all the way until that trade deadline time.
Yeah, so I forgot. Is the relief pitching store on Lexington or Madison?
I don't know.
Well, this is classic Yankee fan thing. Again, I've used this word, I think, in every show. It's myopic. Do you think the Yankees bullpen is throwing more pitches and being used more than other bullpens? I'm not sure that it's being used even more than the other team in New York. I wish I could, I can't call up the stats as I'm talking to you. It just feels like you're watching the Yankees. The Yankees are the only team you care about, and you therefore believe the Yankees are overusing their bullpen more than everyone else. You also believe that somehow there's some team out there on April 8th that's ready to go, yep. And so name it. That team might be Miami. Who do you want for what out of Miami's bullpen? Who do you want for what out of Colorado's bullpen? These teams suck for a very specific reason. It's because they suck, right? And the one thing you could say about there's two things I would offer about the Yankees. One, you could say a lot of things about that organization, but they've been great at creating relief pitching over the last few years. And I'm here to tell you the 2 times I just watched Dennis Santana pitch, it was better than anything I saw him do with the Mets last year. So maybe took a very talented, Dennis Santana's been with a lot of teams because he's talented. Nick Birdy has been with a lot of organizations trying to figure out how to get him healthy because there's real talent there. And the Yankees over the years have turned, at this time last year, if I would have told you, man, you got to keep Ian Hamilton healthy, you would have said, that's the dumbest thing you could say. But Ian Hamilton's now a good relief pitcher. The Yankees are really good at this. And the second thing is they might have some gifts coming, right? Does Tommy Kahnle get healthy at some point and help? Does Scott Efros and Lou Trevino get healthy for the second half and help? Right? Those were 2 guys they traded for at a trade deadline a few years ago. Maybe that's their trade in July, August this year, is those 2 guys coming back to give them 2 more late guys. Would you be surprised if for a decent part of this season, Clayton Beeter is pitching out of the bullpen and they use, this is an all-in year for the Yankees. If they get to a moment where they're like, okay, we'd rather keep Clayton Beeter as a starter at AAA, but we have to be pragmatic about this. I just think the Yankees are better positioned than most because they have been able to create it. They might have some stuff coming. And Ryan, this is an epidemic in the sport. Starters don't go long. And even though every team has an 8-man bullpen, every day I listen to managers go, I used the example on Saturday. The Mets couldn't use 5 relievers. 5. You got 13 pitchers, and there's less pitching than ever before. So I think you think this is a Yankee problem, and I'm here to tell you this is a Major League Baseball problem.
So what I got from what you're saying, Joel, is that was more of a radio take than it was a rational take.
We could go back. I was thinking about it as I watched Sherman pitch great on opening day, what your first radio or rational was. And I just wonder, does anybody feel stupid about that now?
I honestly, probably not. I mean, they probably do feel stupid about that take, obviously, but he's been great. He's been great.
Right. It was a stupid take.
That's why I presented to you. It's radio irrational. You got to tell me when it's radio.
Stupid take in the moment. It didn't get any brighter as he started to, and even if he had pitched poorly, it was a stupid take. But, he took the ball in the home opener. He wasn't running away from anything, and he pitched great in the home opener. He embraced the whole thing, was riling up the crowd, which was building pressure on him. So, yeah, I tend to think we're probably going to be radio on most of these as opposed to rational if I was just a betting man.
I got to be doing my...
I'm not a betting man, Mr. Ohtani said. Anyway.
And you also met with the fan that caught the home run ball. I remember. Listen, I got to set it up and tee you up, and then you got to knock it out, and then you just did. So that's why I'm happy about that. All right, it's time to bring in Tommy Hogan for Hoganalytics. He's going to bring us a stat here about Anthony Volpe, who had another great series against the Blue Jays.
What's up, guys? Yeah, Anthony Volpe, great start to the year. Before I get into that, I guess one question I'd like to piggyback off of, Joel, on the bullpen question. How do you think Luis Gil's stuff would translate to the bullpen? Because we know Garrett Cole's supposed to return to the rotation in about 2 months.
Yeah, I think as long – so he would fall, Tommy, also a little bit. He's coming back from an injury. He has less experience than Clark Schmidt. But even yesterday, it's I get it. It's a small strike zone, but you got to lead. Throw the ball over the plate. Throw it. You got great stuff. Nobody's hitting your fastball. Throw it over the plate. He's anything he wants to be if he stays healthy and throws it over the plate. And it's probably more valuable to have that as a high level, even a mid-rotation starter. But if you think Yankee people aren't wondering what he might look like in their second half bullpen, you'd be wrong. They're certainly wondering what he'd look like in their second half bullpen.
You meant before. I hope I don't get carried away with the follow-ups here, but you mentioned the small strike zone. Should we mention Angel Hernandez, or should we just?
You know
move on
what
to
I
Anthony
think the
Volpe?
saddest thing about Angel Hernandez is, Tommy? I actually think he's a good ball strike caller. Like there was a lot of whining, but like all those pitches by Luis Gil, they were not strikes. They were not strikes. You know, you could complain about it, but they this is where you're Yankee fan. They also weren't a strike for any of the Toronto guys. Like it was the same strike zone. The problem with Angel Hernandez is he can't keep himself out of the fucking game, right? And like I know his name, and he's like a silent movie character. He's always out there gesticulating and moving around, and I could live without Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin on the field. Just stay behind the plate, Angel, and call balls and strikes.
You're right about the ones from Luis Gil, but how about that one from Bowden Francis in the first inning where he steps off the mound, goes back on the mound?
That's not. I said he's a terrific ball strike
He did.
guy, and I also think that is a tough view for the home plate umpire. And there's 3 other umpires looking at that who have a much better view of his back foot. And I think it's always I think Angel Hernandez is a bad umpire because he's overly involved in the game. But that, to me, where are the other 3 umpires to say who could see his back foot clearly, as opposed to an umpire who's got a catcher, a hitter, the pitcher, and the mound to see if the back foot has come off. So I know the easiest thing to do in the world is to pile on Angel Hernandez, and I hate to be an Angel Hernandez protector because that's going to be a very fucking lonely club to be in. But I actually think he's good at balls and strikes. And I actually think that Bowden Francis thing was more about the other 3 umpires than him.
I agree with you, but the pitch was a ball. That was a ball.
You're such a Yankee fan. You're worrying if they won the game. You're worrying about one lobbed pitch in the first inning. That when Angel Hernandez was confused by 11 things going on. Come on, man.
Not worried about it. I think just wanted to point that out.
Every umpire is going to miss about 10% of the calls in every game.
Okay. Okay. So let's get into Anthony Volpe. And we've been told that the tangible change that he has made this season is a flatter bat path. But it also seems like at the plate, he's got a different mentality at the plate right now. So a couple stats to kind of put that into perspective and show that is true. His contact percentage. This season, he's at 87.5% contact percentage, which is the percentage of swings that he makes contact on. That's 9th in all of baseball. Last season, that same number would have been tied for 3rd behind Luis Ariz, who's one of the great contact hitters in the sport, and Nico Horner as well, or it's tied with Nico Horner and behind Luis Ariz and Steven Kwan. Last season, Volpe was at 71.5%. That's 99th in all of baseball. His pitches per plate appearance. So this is his patience at the plate. He leads the Yankees at 4.5 pitches per plate appearance. That's 15th in all of baseball. Last season, he was at 3.89 pitches per plate appearance. Percentage of pitches that Volpe swings at is the lowest on the team at 36.6%. Mookie Betts leads the league in that. Juan Soto led all of baseball at 35.3% last season. Volpe was at 47.9% last season, 79th in all of baseball. So you can see he's being a lot more patient at the plate as well, not just taking the ball the other way, hitting the ball up the middle. Now going to those tangible stats of how the flat bat path is even showing up in the results already. Line drive percentage, 13th in all of baseball for Volpe. Fly ball percentage is 180th out of 206 qualified hitters. His contact made up the middle into the opposite field is at 72.7%. Last season, that was 52.4%. So that's a 20% increase in contact made up the middle and to the opposite field. And then a big one, the big thing for Volpe last season was the strikeouts, 167 strikeouts. Anthony Volpe should not be that guy striking out that much. He hit 115 with 2 strikes last season. That was 293rd out of 299 batters with 100 or 50 more plate appearances. This season, he's hitting 350. That's 14th in all of baseball.
The small sample size is terrific, and I think everything could be bottled into one category, which is swing decisions. What if you're swinging less often and you're having good results, it means that you're reading the pitches better. You're making better swing decisions. Which pitches can I handle? Where can I put them in play? I'm a big two-strike guy. Stat I look at constantly because I feel a little bit like postseason pitching is almost like two-strike pitching. Every pitch is going to be a bitch pitch you're going to get, and therefore, like guys who don't handle two strikes are going to have a very difficult time to me in the postseason, and guys who do handle two strikes are probably going to have more success. So that's a big stat for me. I wrote a column in today's post and Monday's post off of Sunday's game where it felt like Anthony Volpe went from a rookie to a veteran in 3 easy lessons. Like he got away from a guy who I thought was a theorist as a hitting coach, whose theory was one size fit all. It certainly didn't fit Anthony Volpe. And I think he's the better for going back in the laboratory. I think he's well liked and loved in his clubhouse because people know he's serious, cares about winning, cares about being a good player. You talked about all the swing things, and I'm here for it. He had 3 hits yesterday, but he was the best player on the field yesterday. He felt like he was a basketball player getting a triple-double. He made the key defensive play on Saturday night's game. He made the key defensive play in Sunday's game. He stole 2 bases to help get insurance run to keep Clay Holmes out of the game, right? Like, again, baseball's a serial game. What are you doing to help win games and perhaps help win a game tomorrow and the next day? And so I felt like he had a triple-double yesterday, and I have felt that watching the Yankees for about a week and a half now, that his game has become refined, and it happened quickly. There was a lack of refinement last year. He was a rookie. Some get it like this and some don't, and I think that he's getting it. And I'll go back to what I said at the top of the show. If Judge and Soto are the given, and I feel like those 2 guys by themselves probably drag the Yankees back to, at worst, the 10th best offense in the sport. How much closer to number 1 do they get is about the chorus. It's about Stanton. It's about LeMahieu. It's about Torres. And it's about Volpe. If Volpe is going to join this group and be even an 800 OPS guy, right? Forget about he's up over 1,000 now. It's probably tough to believe he's going to stay in that range. But he's an 800 OPS guy with 30 steals and 55, 60 extra base hits. Yankees going to have a top 5 offense.
It's going to be again. We're seeing the maturation. I think of Volpe, like you said, Joel. He had some great defensive plays this past weekend, and like
clutch plays.
Clutch
also,
plays.
There's nothing more. Tommy, and Ryan, I'll throw this in. I know there was always a lot of criticism about Derek Jeter's range as a defender, and I'm not here to say, oh, he had range. It was an issue. But if you asked any Yankee, you're winning the game 3-2, bottom of the 9th at Fenway Park, and the ball's going to be hit at somebody. Who do you hope the ball gets hit at? Every guy on the team would have said Jeter. Jeter was unafraid and was great at handling a play in a big spot. It's too early to put this guy in the same sentence as a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? But right now, I think if you asked all the Yankees, a ball's going to be hit in the 9th inning in a 3-2 game. Where do you want the ball hit? I'm not sure that Volpe doesn't win the vote.
Wow. He's been that impressive already to start this year. Joel, Tommy, thank you so much for the stats, man. That's awesome about Volpe. We're looking forward to seeing how he keeps this up, man. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
All right, Joel, let's wrap this all up. I want to go to Joel's notebook here. We just went through the home opening series for the Yankees. Is there any home opener moments that come to mind in your vast knowledge and history of covering this game, that the memory you really want to share with us?
So it's one that nobody could have seen unless you were in the press corps. I wonder how many of my colleagues remember it. So in 1996, going into that year, I think it's easy to forget. The Yankees were really beat up between the offseason of 95 and 96 for no bigger reason than Buck Showalter left and Joe Torre, who was seen at that time as one of the great losers in the game's history, had played like the 5th most games ever without ever being in the playoffs, had managed in 3 places, had been to the playoffs once and didn't win a playoff game. Like there was like 4,000 total games of managing and playing at a high level. He was a very good player. He was an MVP in 71. That he had never been in the postseason. The Orioles seemed to have this great offseason where they were going to win the offseason. And there was a columnist in town. People will probably figure out all this. I'm going to take the names out, I think. There was a columnist in town who was relentlessly beating up the Yankees for what they did. And George Steinbrenner had a bunch of cronies around them. One of them was a guy named Arthur Richmond, whose brother Milton, we'll tell a story a different time, hired me at UPI, and is in the writers' wing of the Hall of Fame. He worked at UPI forever. Arthur worked for the Mets. He worked for the Yankees. Mainly, he was a crony of George. He was that kind of guy, and he was kind of a negative, very negative guy. And the writer, the columnist, described him and another Yankee official as Steinbrenner's bootlickers during the offseason because they didn't like Buck, and this columnist liked Buck a great deal. And so on opening day in 96, in the old Yankee Stadium, as sometimes happenstance happens, these two cross paths. And I'm here to tell you, these are flyweights. They're both about 5'4". And the Yankee executive, Arthur Richmond's probably 70 at the time. The columnist is maybe late 40s, early 50s. And Arthur Richmond starts screaming at the columnist, "You call me a bootlicker, I will lay you out and hear you." And then going after him, and "I'll kill you where you sit." And it was a good, ugly, yelling confrontation. The columnist saw no reason that it was kind of an undignified moment and decided to kind of give it one of those and then continue on because there's no winning that one, right? Like if you fight and lose to the 70-year-old guy, that sucks. If you fight and beat the shit out of the 70-year-old guy, that's not good. So it kept it moving. But like, it probably says a lot about me that my greatest Yankee home opener memory, and I believe that was the snow day where Pettit pitches in the snow in 96. So that's a pretty memorable one as well. But underneath the bowels of Yankee Stadium, because that's where the old press room was in the old Yankee Stadium, we had a real featherweight competition go into it. And that's my memory from a Yankee home opener.
Just to clarify, there were no punches thrown between the two?
No punches. Before, I got to say this. Before the internet, there used to be a lot of confrontations between reporters and the people they covered. And I'm here to say I probably led the league a couple of years in that category. And there's just, like now, they're done without... there's no context to them. Like people just get their jollies off and post them. And, like it's an antagonistic relationship at times. Competitive people on both sides of the aisle. And I personally I've never had a real problem with it. I think there's probably a professional way to handle it. But, like I write critically about somebody if they want to kind of scream a little bit. I've never... let's scream at each other and see if we could shake hands at the end of it. And maybe if you give me a chance, maybe I'll explain where I was coming from and you could explain where you're coming from. And the likelihood is you're not being traded and I'm not being fired. So we're going to have to learn to live around each other. So, but I've got to say, Ryan, I do everything in my power now to avoid these because they're going to have a half-life or more on social media. They're going to be without context. Almost everyone is going to take the side of a team and a player over, look, the news industry is not a popular business. So you're going to get the shit beat out of you in social media. And so I never want to give up my dignity, and I'd still rather have the confrontation than lose dignity, but I'll try as hard as I can to avoid it because we live in an age where it's just so much worse than we'll do it another time. I know we're long here it's the thing I had with Brian Cashman in the off season. Yeah. And I swear to you, in real time, I didn't think anything of it, because Brian Cashman and I have certainly had plenty of give and takes that are uncomfortable over the years, but they're done underneath the stadium and just me and him on the phone, something like that. This was on camera, and I didn't think anything of it. And like a half hour later, somebody said, "Oh man, you went viral." And I was like, "What?" And I honestly, if you were there, it was a different experience than what people saw, where people would say, "Oh, you really gave it to him." And I said, "I really didn't. Like, that's not, like, if I were there to give it to him, that's not what I would have done. I was trying to get a question answered. I thought he was being evasive. I was trying to hold him to the account. That's part of the job. I think Brian Cashman is better than almost anyone else in his job, being available and accessible in these situations. I'm sorry, I went long here. It's just like, I just think these confrontations, because of social media, which probably had a benefit often because both sides got to blow off steam and see each other at the end of it.
Right.
They don't happen anymore, and things fester in a way that I think isn't good for the relationships of the ball players and the people who cover them.
100%, Joel. And it is sometimes it's a thankless job that you do, but like at the end of the day, like, you are writing for the fans, and we do read the stuff that you write, and the criticisms that you share are mostly the same ones that we share as well for the team. And that's how we formulate an opinion, and we get the coverage from you. But we appreciate you, Joel, as always, for going around and talking all the Yankees baseball this past week. Great start for them this season, and we're looking forward to talking to you again next week, man.
All right, Ryan, all the best.